I'm Karima Brown. It's Sunday morning and it's time for The Fix. In the hot seat today is the new SARS Commissioner, Edward Kieswetter, who will share his plans to recalibrate the beleaguered revenue services, the majority of whose members are on strike. Then we focus on the creep of political intolerance, often leading to race baiting, xenophobia, and what some have termed fascism that has come to dominate the way in which political discourse is unfolding in the country. And as is custom, we take a look at our weekend newspapers to see what's made headlines this week and why. The Fix starts now. This is The Fix, where every Sunday, without fear or favour, we question the big hitters. We look ahead to tell you what matters, how it affects you, and why you should care. And as usual, I'm joined in the studio with my sparring partner, Peter Bruce, who is, of course, Business Day and Sunday Times columnist. Peter, it's an ace weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an ace weekend. Ace is all over the papers today. Peter Louis Myberg has written what is bound to be an excellent book. He's done, you can see the quality of the investigation that he's produced. Started off in Daily Maverick earlier this week. Sunday Times has got a great story. City Press has obviously got a copy of the book. And he's a really careful investigator.
Absolutely.
By the way, this is what investigative journalism looks like.
Yes.
A dumping of 200,000-300,000 Gupta emails was not quite there yet.
Yes.
You know, because they needed to be studied and analysed, but they didn't have to be gotten in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think this is.
And also this is triangulated information, which I think is really important.
He's done it.
And we'll, of course, focus with that when we speak with Carl Cohen. Yeah. But you've written some interesting stuff today. But before we get there, because you mentioned him, let's speak about the president's son, Andile Ramaphosa, who's now written in the Sunday Times this morning.
He's written a long piece trying to explain, and I'm afraid failing to explain, why he was paid 2 million rand by Bosasa.
Yes.
My understanding was that if you read the article that he writes in the Sunday Times today, he gets Bosasa to do some work in Uganda, where unfortunately his father is also extremely well connected, as we know, and yet somehow Bosasa ends up paying him.
Yes.
So it's not clear from Andile's piece why Bosasa was paying him. So he's got a whole lot of questions still to ask. Maybe they can make space for him in the Sunday Times again next week, because I need to sit down and ask him. The last I got to was about 10 questions, you know. What did you do for the 2 million?
Yes.
What was it for? You know, and what did Bosasa do then that was, you know, that was...
And what was so invaluable from Bosasa as a company, as opposed to any other company to go and get these services?
So Andile had business with a Chinese company which supplies security cameras. Now, you know, we all know Bosasa does that kind of work. It was in Uganda. It seemed to have something to do with the pipeline. It's an appalling piece in today's paper. It's not an explanation, Andile. And... you've got to do it again.
Absolutely. And of course, this brings me to the piece that you wrote, which is a piece that looks at Shamila Batoy.
Yeah.
And as I was saying to you earlier, I get the impression a bird is whispered in your ear. Yeah. And it looks as if Shamila Batoy isn't going to go for the big political players that have, you know, patently been linked to corruption.
From what I've been hearing.
At least not before the elections.
Yeah. So, you know, there are a couple of really easy cases now. VBS being the easiest one. It's practically prosecution ready. I mean, it's just that, and you would have thought that to show their bona fides as a an apolitical force for justice, that they would immediately prosecute what they've got in front of it, you know. And apparently a decision has been taken that absolutely no way will they prosecute any of the people who benefited from the pillage at VBS, which includes Julius Malema, it includes Floyd Chivambo, it includes the former head of the ANC Youth League in Limpopo, whose name I can't remember for the moment. And this can be easily done. They're not going to do it. because and it's so stupid. Because,
this is what I was going to ask, Peter. What is the big reason why they're not going to do it before May the 8th?
You remember the last people who did this? The last people who had this kind of conversation were Bulelani Ngcuka and Leonard McCarthy, right? Both head of the Scorpions, former head of the NPA at the time. When should we charge Jacob Zuma? This is just before the 2007 ANC elective conference at Polokwane.
And stupidly bringing politics into this decision.
They bring politics into
instead
that
of
decision,
evidence.
and they decide not to charge him. Zuma wins, and the rest is history. The Scorpions are no more. Thank you, Leonard, and for your courage. And the same thing is going to happen to Batoyi now. If she cannot immediately prove that she can act out of strength and for justice without any other consideration, then she's just, she's another political prosecutor.
The thing that you mentioned in the article that caught my eye, that I thought was really important, was you saying that the danger of leaving such important political players until after the election, in the case of the EFF, who is completely linked to VBS, you're saying that at the moment the EFF is a 7-point-something party.
6.3.
6.3 party. After this election, they might be an even bigger party. They might play the same trick.
If they double their vote, and the ANC, for instance,
it becomes extremely hard for her to go after them.
Absolutely, because you might find Julius Malema in the middle of an excruciating coalition decision with the ANC, which is now get 48% or something in Gauteng, and needs a coalition partner, and the DA won't partner with anybody who is bigger than it, so it can sit there and be the kind of smug opposition. And Julius will then be calling the shots.
This segue is nice.
And is Shamila Batoyi going to take him on then? No way.
This segues very nicely into the question around SARS. We saw a very important piece written by the Mail and Guardian political editor, Natasha Marion, where she looked at the SARS strike that has been on for a couple of days and, of course, have had devastating consequences on our economy. But one of the sentences in the story says, "Bring Tom Moyane back." Now, that, of course, is...
Isn't that interesting? I mean, there's a...
it reminds me of the workers who came and toyed when Brian Molefe got that reprieve and got back to Eskom, and now wants to demand increases from Eskom. I mean, we had SARS here last week where we spoke to them and the unions. We asked them if they think 11.4% is increases that workers in other sectors, for example, are getting. But what does this tell you about the state of this organization, which we know, of course, is an integral part of the state capture narrative?
Well, I mean, what it tells us about the workforce is that they're going on strike for different reasons. If people are going on strike because they want Tom Moyane back, then there's the old Zuma fight back, whatever the result of that is supposed to be, at play. Whether that's whether people do that for money or not, I have absolutely no idea. Because it's not clear what Tom Moyane would come back in order to do.
Yes.
But I mean, we're going to speak to Ed Kieswetter just now. He will this strike, depending on how long it lasts. I hope it doesn't last a month because he starts at the beginning of May. But it's an ugly situation. 11.4% is absurd. Given the state of the economy, given the state of SARS, and the cost to the economy of the strike, of customs duties not being collected, taxes not being collected, is immeasurable.
Absolutely. Peter, hold your thought. We are, of course, going to be joined after the break as we speak with newly appointed SARS Commissioner, the very Edward Kieswetter, who will share his plans to recalibrate the beleaguered revenue services. Don't go away.